Welcome to Far Out with Faust. I'm Faust Chicho, and today I'm sitting here with two very special guests who I'm thrilled to have on for you guys, Alex Colby and Ted Wallach. Now, I know there are several books, documentaries, and TV shows in the works from HBO and Netflix about the meteoric rise and fall of the $47 billion company WeWork, which I'm sure you've heard of. Both of these guys were very involved in the company from early on, and they used to be close with CEO Adam Neumann and his wife, Rebecca, who are now very famous. And well, for people who aren't familiar with this story, guys, could you tell us a little bit about WeWork and your early roles in the company, just to familiarize everyone who isn't in the know per se?
Sure. Alex, you want to start or shall I?
You start.
Okay.
Don't be shy.
Let's see. Well, when I got to WeWork, there were 3 buildings, and it was a new concept called co-working, where I think everybody knows what that means now, right? Or do we need to get into what that means?
I think everybody knows what that means.
Okay, so office spaces and that sort of thing, and then some kind of social interaction. And Adam asked me to be the creative director. And I didn't know exactly what that meant at the time, as I had been making movies and didn't know anything about advertising, nor did they need advertising because they were really the only players in the space. Nobody even heard of the space. And then it began to grow, and we moved from building to building and started doing more and more different things and trying to put different kind of, my team was trying to put different kind of videos and parties and activations, and then we started to work with charities and things like that, and just sort of played with the idea of this place is the world's first physical social network, and that, what would Facebook look like if it lived on the ground? And
right. And that the world's first physical network, that became the branding and kind of the core and the heart of WeWork. Would you say that's accurate?
I wouldn't call it the branding. I would call it I remember I threw a party for WeWork at the Box, and Adam and I were on stage talking to not a very large group of people at that point. And he was saying, now we're the world's first physical social network. And so it was more like a rallying cry maybe than a brand. Because branding wasn't really something we talked very much about, because basically there was WeWork, the way it looked, and the actual logo, and that logo was the brand. And Miguel had created that a while back, and that's what it was. And yeah.
Alex, you want to tell us a little bit about your role?
Sure. I was new to New York City and someone had introduced me to Ted. Ted's also a magician, and he caught his wallet on fire, and I was like, this guy's dope. I'm going to do what this guy does. And so basically I paired up with him. We started working on these interesting, crazy projects. And then he told me there's going to be a day where we're embedded and into a new company and become their creative unit. And he just manifested that. And so my first introduction to WeWork was that box party that Ted had just spoken about. And I was doing their a promo video for that. That night I came home and I edited it that night and then sent it to them in the morning. And they were like, who the heck is this guy? I can't believe he did it this fast. And then basically in maybe a month, Ted was just come into the office and let's do this. And it just started from there. And there was only 3 buildings. I got a title pretty late in the game. They didn't really know what to call me. But I was called Director of Multimedia.
For people watching, we're going to be showing a few of his videos, I imagine. A little later in the podcast, but extraordinary talent.
Thanks so much. it was a very unique space because they gave me the freedom to basically film whatever I wanted and make whatever I wanted. And then Ted was throwing out ideas, and then I would just create these ideas and make them real. And we shook WeWork up.
So you guys were basically like some of the first employees on the ground who were making some of the bigger creative decisions.
Yeah. There wasn't a creative directing team. There was like,
well,
right.
let me speak to that, because it was actually an interesting day when we had gotten our business cards, and I hadn't met Devin at that point, who was he was the person who worked under Miguel and did all the design for all the buildings and all that kind of stuff. That was his, and his business card also said creative director. And we were already kind of, like, who's this guy and why is he taking up this space? And he was feeling this way about me. And I was kind of growing this team larger and larger. And he was like, well, what are they doing over there? Like, this is like, what, and so we walked up and I was like, I guess we have the same business card. And so the reason for that is, and I think maybe that sort of speaks to some of the later confusion, is that, like, well, a creative director could be the person who is responsible for the look of the product, who creates, directs the creativity of the product itself, the buildings, how they look, how they feel, all that kind of stuff. And that was Devin. And then the other creative director, me, is responsible for, well, God knows what, but to make all kinds of crazy shit and just put it out into the world and make it awesome. And that was sort of, there really was no mandate. It was just sort of like, make stuff. Yeah. And then, like, I don't know, one day Madonna's boyfriend comes by and is like looking at the screen, and Adam's like, that's Madonna's boyfriend. Yeah. And we're like, okay, we'll show him some cool shit. So we just showed him some cool shit, and he got excited, and that was,
show him something quick. So where was this happening? Like, what were the first buildings that you guys were working at?
It was at 175 Varick.
Oh, right on Varick, huh?
Yeah, and that became our hub. And it's so interesting, Ted, to hear you talk about, like, your dynamics with Devin about a business card. Like, I was so oblivious to all of this happening. This was literally my first job in New York, and I had no idea what corporate structure is or anything like that. And I was like, sweet, I get to just run around with the camera and do what I like to do. Yeah. This is awesome. And I was completely oblivious of any of the politics around what this is, which then bit me in the ass because I had no idea how to stick up for myself or anything. Yeah. And it was, but it literally became my home. Like, when I walked into WeWork, it felt great. Like, it's constant activity, young people, all these people doing cool things. And I'm running into a person at a coffee, but getting coffee. We start talking about, like, how to change the world. And it just became these, like, hubs of inspiration that I'd never thought could exist outside of college. Like, it felt like I was part of a community.
Well, you were. I mean, it sure sounds like you were, at least at the start. A lot of high people were brought in, and while the communities were merging and, projects were being born, but they weren't making any money off their $250 membership. Walk me through that first meeting you had with Adam Neumann, and what were your impressions with him when you first started working with him?
Well, I met him on the film shoot that I was supporting the director who was working, Hunter, who was working with Rebecca. He asked me to just help him out with the film, and I was happy to do it. Hunter's been an amazing teacher, and I wanted to be useful. And then one day Rebecca was like, "You must meet my husband." I'm like, okay. So that was Adam. And, he had all this, like, energy, and, he was very excited, but he was very determined, and it wasn't entirely clear what he was talking about, but it was interesting. And then I don't know, I guess we kind of hung out a bit and then started to get to know each other. And then at one point he was like, you know, you should be involved in what we're doing. And I was like, okay, what do I do? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, well, maybe, you know, I was like, I don't really understand what co-working is, but maybe what I could do is I could, because I'm kind of good at networking and like, you know, meeting people and introducing people to each other and stuff like that. So maybe I could like start meeting people and then sort of connect them to each other. Because if co-working is about working together, then you know, and you've got these buildings filled with people, like maybe I'll introduce that guy to that guy and get them to make something together and stuff like that. And he was like, that might work. That could be interesting, but then that didn't quite land. And so we sort of kept talking and,
but you
and
did
then,
end up doing a lot of that though. I mean, from what I understand.
Not so much that. No, I mean, really what we ended up doing a lot of was like following around companies that were really interesting and like making videos about them or telling their story that, you know, that they were there and that's what they were doing. And that's, was more that kind of stuff. And then trying to do more activations and things that different ways of, like at one point.
What do you mean when you say activations?
Like at one point, we got into the idea that like, if it spins is me. And so I was like, well, what are you doing for that? So they were about to go to LA and they were going to have a big sign. And I was like, well, what if we did like a moving sign? Like, what if we made it more interesting? And he was like, okay, what would that look like? And I was like, I don't know, let's get a structural engineer and see what happens. So I got like a 3D structural engineer to come in and like work with me. And we started to like build it out and it would be like a we thing spinning on top of the, but that never went anywhere. Cause that started to like, that's where like my creative started to like lean into the creative of the, like the building creative. And that was when things got like, at one point I walked over to Miguel, who's Adam's partner and sort of in charge of the creative. And I was like, we don't really have a logo. We just have like, you know, the word and like, what about this? I showed him something and cause I was just drawing on a napkin and he was like, whoa, wait, we can't take this, you guys, and then it got complicated because it's like, who's in charge of that? You know, it's like, well, we don't want to take that away from Devin and, you know, you can't start having that conversation yet. And we're still just bootstrapping. So we don't want to make any, you know, decisions yet. So at one point we were like, okay, so what should we do next? And Hunter, who had, you know, introduced me to Rebecca and Adam in the first place, was like, well, we got to end oil subsidies in America and we got to do it for WeWork. And I was like, great, let's do it. And so we started doing a campaign to end oil subsidies in America. And we started creating a whole video and we started doing like trying to raise money to pay for the video and then all kinds of other things and a website and blah, blah, blah. And I think at that point we started to get a little off the topic of like what WeWork is, because it's like, what do they have to do with ending oil subsidies? But at that point I had moved my office up to a different place where I wasn't so close to all the action and therefore I could kind of do whatever I wanted and got a bunch of people and started putting together a team. And we had a whole bunch of kids like covered in oil, shooting against a green screen in one of the conference rooms. And it was a lot of fun. And I made the mistake of not including Rebecca, Adam's wife, who wanted to be involved creatively. And I sort of was like, didn't let her, and that wasn't very nice. That was not a good thing to do. You do not want to piss off the CEO's wife. But I sort of felt like, well, what does she have to do with the creative team? And that was one activation. Another activation, I was asked to create a campaign with Charity Water. And they said, well, what if we were to raise money by going to each floor of our building and asking everybody for money? And then we'll have each floor compete against each other and we'll see who raises the most money. And I was like, didn't we just ask these people to quit their real corporate job and come do what they love and try to like make something? I'm like, do we really want to ask them for money? Can we come up with something better? And so I was like, how about we do this? How about like, Alex is here. Alex shoots beautifully. These people are already talking about how excited they are about the companies that they have. Let's get them into a conference room. Let's get Alex to shoot it. and we'll take those videos and we'll sell it to American Express because Amex Open wanted all this content. And then we'll get Amex to pay for the wells in Africa. And so we did that with Charity Water, which was awesome. And when Adam got home, he heard what I was up to. At that point, I was working for Miguel directly. Because at one point, Adam sort of was like, I don't know what you do, Ted, and I don't really know how to manage you. I know you're doing something creative and interesting, so keep doing it. But like, I think Miguel has to be in charge of it because I don't really understand what you do. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I don't really know what I do either, so that makes sense. Miguel was off in South Korea doing something, I'm not sure, something in a helicopter involved. I don't remember. It was something complicated. But and then Adam had just finished. I guess he had just been in Israel, probably meeting with VC, and he came home. And at that point, I had finished the Charity Water thing, and then I had a whole bunch of other cool shit set up with Falling Whistles, this social group in Africa, and HP and Microsoft and Hunts Point Alliance for Children. I was like putting brands and social causes together on behalf of WeWork. And I brought Adam in, and I had a whole room set up to show all the different activations we could do. And he kind of looked at me and was like, I don't know what you're doing. And I was like, well, I thought it would be cool to kind of like, bring brands and causes together because we care about like social action and doing good in the world and this sort of thing. And he was like, what's the ROI on that? And I didn't know what ROI meant because I was a filmmaker, and that's not a good thing when you're talking to a CEO who's just left the VC. Like, but he was like, well, what's like, he's like, we sell like square footage, right? He's like, and for the first time in my life, I realized this is a real estate company. And I had just no fucking clue of that. Like that didn't even dawn on me. Like, this is a company that rents real estate. Like that's what they do. But that didn't feel at all like what was going on when we were there.
Because that's not what was going on. I think
that was not what was going on while we were there. No, we were doing all kinds of crazy shit. And it was a lot of fun. And it was like, we were going to change the world because we were going to change the way people work. We were going to change the way people come to work. We were going to change the way people interact with each other. We were going to create a currency. Like I was working with like experts on like currency.
Disney dollars, but dollars.
Yeah. Really, like I was talking with people who were experts on alternative currency so we could come up with a currency that would be specifically for WeWork and that would help generate more interaction between people, because I always felt like co-working should be about working together, and the more glass walls we put up, the less working together. And there was a lot of like drinking together and like partying together, and that's nice, but it's not really working together. So I thought, maybe that would be cool.
We're going to get into that too. There was a lot of social events and partying that went on that kind of began to define WeWork in a lot of ways. We're going to get into that, but I want to hear from Alex.
Yeah, I can. What do you want to
hear? Well, I mean, you were really instrumental in some of the more mind-blowing and successful campaigns that WeWork put forth. And as an editor and as someone who really kind of understood this vision, which wasn't exactly what WeWork was, but that was what they were selling. And I think everyone really bought into it. It sounds like it's such a contagious community, that to be a part of something that is spreading these ideas. And I've watched some of your videos. They were like, you can see why they were closing $1 million deals. They were the great videos. So, I guess I just wanted to get into a little bit about, it just amazes me that Adam was able to attract such a wide array of creative talent, like these heart-centered people who came from filmmaking and all the different, arts, and because they believed in his vision. And, at what point did you start to realize things weren't what they seemed?
Yeah. So WeWork got me as a heart-centered individual that I am because of Ted. So Ted brought me in and I was like, sweet, I get to work with Ted. And then Ted would create all of these, as you heard, he'd have all these ideas of how to make this into something bigger than a real estate company. And I was the guy's like, cool, let me make that. And then I would like pull from YouTube videos, make something, a video, and then it would make it real. And then Adam was like, sweet, now I know what that is. But because they were such big ideas, it was really hard to execute with the zero budgets that we had. And so what happened is that Ted was the big idea guy. I was the executor guy. Everyone then started whispering in my ear, why do you need Ted? Why do you need Ted? And then it was weird because like it built me up. I was very manipulated in the fact of just like, cool, like I can do this. I don't need Ted. And then that was a very easy for them to then, oh, Alex can exist on his own. Let's not use Ted. When Ted left, there goes my safety net. There goes my other heart-centered person. Now I'm part of this WeWork. And the thing with it is like, I got to be very super connected with people like Miguel and Adam and kind of be in the driver's seat around how this visual brand is shown. Yeah. And a lot of it was coming from how I was experiencing it. Because with a camera, it's like literally how you see the world. I am very joyful. I'm very like, I love meeting new people. And so the feeling of the videos were that I would go around, I would meet all the people. And the thing is like, when you start making videos that showcase events that are really great, that equals tickets, that equals new renting spaces. It makes you feel happy and joyful. Oh, sweet, this is what WeWork is. Boom, I want to get a desk. Then with buildings and things like that, like I made videos for building managers to make them feel good, to show them, to then feel happy when they're in the meeting because there's a video about them. So I would like target it to them by like writing their name or something along those lines that then made them feel special. And then they would be like, sweet, I want to be part of this and pay half what I would normally get. Right. And it got even crazier when I literally started filming videos for big real estate companies like Forest City Ratner. And I was their like kind of side guy. And they would say, Alex could go film that. And then Forest City Ratner's like, whoa, WeWork gave us this guy to film our videos. That was so kind of him because I wasn't Alex, I was WeWork. Yeah. I would come in, make everyone happy, make them this video that literally, the one video I remember, the video won the Cornell, dude, I was part of insane real estate projects. The Cornell Island Project campus, the Lower East Side, Seward Park. Like I made specialized videos for all of them to win those bids. Wow. This was all under what was the value of some of those bids for people who don't know? $22 million, like $22 million. The other one was like, one was like 30 million, right? I mean, they were just like huge, crazy, big real estate buys that no one else would have a heart-centered video to show at their pitch. The thing about it is like, I still didn't know what I was doing. Still my first job. Don't have the heart-centered Ted anymore. And I'm just like, sweet, I'm still part of it. This makes me feel happy. But then when I literally could only afford $1 bagels because I was making 60 grand a year and paying rent in New York City, then I was like, oh, wait a second. This isn't, I'm looking at other people and they're living very differently. Like, why am I struggling this much? And that's when I started getting like this like darkness in it. And I remember they built an entire floor called the film floor that I was supposed to run. So there was only going to be film projects. Rebecca and Bonnie were going to run this. Right. And I remember going there and I was so scared. First of all, because I was poor. Secondly, because like I didn't know how to run a floor. And I remember I would literally go in, they have 2 editing booths and they had sound, it was all soundproof. And I remember I could go in and I could lock it. Wow. And I remember going in there because that made me feel safe. And I just started locking myself. And then people were like, what the fuck's Alex doing?
Dude. Oh man, I've worked in corporate America and executive sales, and I've done a similar
resonate with that?
thing. I mean, I've literally like locked myself in a bathroom, hiding on top of this stuff because I was a salesman, and it was a power line, and I did really well. And so when you're on top of the line, they just keep sending you out and sending you out, and I would literally hide from this redheaded secretary who, I would be closing a deal and they would pull me off the deal. It's a $35,000 deal that you made in an hour, and they would pull me off the deal and put me back on the line. And, it's exhausting. It's like, I'm an actor. It's like doing the Crucible for 2 hours and then being pulled off and being like, okay, you're up, do it again. And I'm like, I used to hide, man. I hated it.
Yeah. And I also just didn't have the skill set or tools to protect myself, because there was no separation between personal and business. This was all my life. And so like when I felt like being cheated, or like things kind of opened up to see the reality of what was actually going on, which was, this is just a real estate company. And oh my gosh, now they don't care about the entrepreneurs. They're literally bringing IBM in to rent the top 6 floors.
Can you tell me a little bit about the company retreats, which are also now famous? Some of the retreats are very are being written about, and
they've had a ton. The biggest one was summer camp, and that was the one that it was put on. Were you still there, Ted, when summer camp happened? Yeah, you came.
That was right before I got fired. It was warming me up to get fired.
So they had tequila on tap, right? I mean, they had kegs on tap, they had tequila on tap. These were like some epic parties, right?
Yeah, but the first one was like super great. Like there was kegs and stuff like that, but it was like super low key. Like it felt like a family kind of event. Like they rented out a Jewish summer camp of one of the CTOs or something like that, and it was very like camp and warm and fun, and then the following years it just got crazier and crazier, and like just started elevating to the extent where like, and now the chain smokers are on stage, and I'm like, how much the fuck did you pay these guys? And then the next act was The Weeknd, and he came in on a helicopter.
Oh my God, man.
Yeah. Like and I would just run around with a camera, film my experience of how I was experiencing it. And so then everyone saw, okay, cool, this could be my experience too.
Yeah. But just for context, for our listeners, in 2017, WeWork lost $883 million, despite having an $886 million revenue. Okay, in 2018, they managed to lose $1.9 billion on about $1.8 billion of revenue. So, and that's according to the Financial Times. And it's just, you're getting a little idea of how this company became so large and still was finding ways to lose money. I mean, and you're getting a little glimpse of that with some of the stories Ted and Alex are sharing with us.
Though, I think that if you look at Amazon, for example, they lost money for a very long time and then eventually started making money. And I think absolutely WeWork could have done the same thing if they actually were specific about what the product was.
Yeah.
But when the product started to seem like a tech product, and therefore have an exponential possibility behind it, that's not true. There are buildings. It's not a tech product. That's where things started to go terribly wrong.
And the marketing. I don't know if you could call it marketing, because you have to call it marketing. I mean, the campaigns that you guys did were awesome, and you would think that you had this, like the impression that I got was like, this thing was gonna be huge, and it became huge.
I think at the time, like, we were starting to realize that Facebook is actually anti-social media, and it's actually pulling people apart. And we started to get some of the science back that, like, actually the more time you spend on Facebook, the more depressed and anxious you feel. This was long before we even realized Yeah, this is long before we realized all the nasty shit we know now. But like, basically, they're weaponizing gossip, and WeWork seemed like not that. Like, you know, one of the lines I wrote for them was, "Sometimes you got to be in the room." It's like, well, if we're in the room with real people, then something real will happen. It could be wonderful, like really special and amazing, because it's not some bullshit in the cloud. It's like we're here in real time and real people, and that seemed like something really powerful and wonderful.
Like that's, and I would just run around with a camera, film my experience of how I was experiencing it, and so then everyone saw, okay, cool, this could be my experience too.
Yeah, but just for context, you know, for our listeners, in 2017, WeWork lost $883 million despite having an $886 million revenue. Okay, in 2018, they managed to lose $1.9 billion on about $1.8 billion of revenue. So, and that's according to the Financial Times. And it's just, you're getting a little idea of how this company became so large and still was finding ways to lose money. You know, I mean, and you're getting a little glimpse of that with some of the stories Ted and Alex are sharing with us.
You know, though, I think that if you look at Amazon, for example, they lost money for a very long time and then eventually started making money. And I think absolutely WeWork could have done the same thing if they actually were specific about what the product was.
Yeah.
But when the product started to seem like a tech product,
yeah,
and therefore have an exponential possibility behind it, that's not true. There are buildings. It's not a tech product. That's where things started to go terribly wrong.
And the all the the marketing, I don't know if you could call it marketing, because yeah, you have to call it marketing. You know, I mean, the campaigns that you guys did were awesome. And you know, you would think that you had this, you know, like the impression that I got was like, you know, this thing was going to be huge, and it became huge, you know.
You know, I think at the time, like, we were starting to realize that Facebook is actually anti-social media, and it's actually pulling people apart. And, you know, we started to get some of the science back that, like, actually the more time you spend on Facebook, the more depressed and anxious you feel. This is long before we even realized, this is long before we realized all the nasty shit we know now. But like, basically they're weaponizing gossip. And WeWork seemed like not that. Like, you know, one of the lines I wrote for them was, "Sometimes you got to be in the room." It's like, well, if we're in the room with real people, then something real will happen. It could be wonderful, like really special and amazing, because it's not some bullshit in the cloud. It's like we're here in real time and real people. And that seemed like something really powerful and wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how did you get fired, Ted?
Well, I got fired because, well, I mean, partly I got fired, I think, because I pissed off Rebecca, which was stupid and my fault. I mean, what I didn't know yet is that people support what they help create. What I thought was people support the smartest guy in the room with the best idea. That's not true. People support what they help create. I didn't know that. So I didn't allow Rebecca to be a part of the creative campaigns that we were running. I kept pushing her out, and she kept wanting to be involved, and that's not a good idea. Nobody said anything about that later. That wasn't the reason I got fired, but I'm sure that didn't help. So then the reason I got fired was because I did the charity water thing that we talked about before, where we basically got wells built in Africa because people were coming in and talking about what they love. Like, to me, that was fucking awesome. And that's when Adam was like, "I don't know what the fuck you're doing. Like, this is not, where's the ROI? What are you doing?"
Yeah.
You know,
Ted,
and I was like,
yeah, I remember you
Ted's
brought
like,
in yellow charity water canisters and started building sculptures in all the WeWorks, and everyone's like, "What the fuck is going on?"
That's right. I was like, look, if we're going to do something with charity water, let's do something with charity water. So yeah, I built big sculptures. I put on that, you know, and I made a deal with American Express so that they'd pay $1,000 a video. And we were like, let's fucking do this. Let's see what's possible. And then he was like, yeah, what's the ROI and then square footage. And then he was like, why would you give all of those videos away to American Express for free? And I was like, what do you mean for free? They paid for it to build the wells in Africa. And he's like, yeah, but that money didn't come back to us. And I was like, no, it went to charity water to build the wells in Africa. And he was like, yeah, but how does that help us? And I was like, how does that not help us? Like, I don't understand. Like, it's amazing. Like, people come in, they talk about what you want them talking about anyway, which is their new business. And then, like, because they're talking about it in front of Alex with his camera, wells get built in Africa. That's fucking awesome. And he was like, I don't think this is the right place for you anymore. I think maybe we need to, that was kind of the end of that. And then I went into a long, deep depression.
Alex, can you talk about your perspective of that campaign and Ted's, the end of Ted's kind of career?
So basically it was like he upset Rebecca. So Rebecca's whispering in Adam's ear when they go to bed, fire this guy. Then he comes in, it's like winter. He comes in carrying, he's brought in 3 assistants, comes in carrying like all of these yellow, huge 20-gallon water jugs, and just starts building shit, causing like by the elevator door, people couldn't get in. Like, it was just like, he just created chaos in his ideas, but he didn't know really how to fully execute them. But he wanted to hold on to this idea of being the one that like got him out of the trouble with Rebecca. Is my take. It was like this, like you knew it was a great idea, and like you're like, I can't wait for this to be successful. And it was just, the problem with it was there was a chaotic energy around it. Yeah. So it never felt grounded. And for me, I was like, I should just stay away from this. Like, I was like, this now, Ted feels like he's sinking and he's grasping for life or grasping for air. And I'm like, I'm going to stay here and like stay on this float. And that's when the distance came apart. And to be honest, it really distanced Ted and I in general. Like, I didn't really know how to have conversations with him after that. Like, it made me feel very insecure around my real friendship with one of this guys who like was a big part of my life. And that made, looking back on that now, like that probably brought me feeling really sad. And
and that's the biggest reason why I'm fascinated with the story and having you guys talk about it is because there seems to be a general there's a misalignment between heart-shaped creative people who come into corporate America, and there's a lot to that we're going to try to unpack a little bit on this podcast. But I'm grateful to hear you guys lay out the story of how these things clashed, and why they clash in our society, and how those clashes end up being, the downfall of billion-dollar companies. So I just wanted to reference that because it's one of the biggest reasons that I'm fascinated in this story. Besides the fact that it's kind of like it's very hot right now.
One of the coolest things just to highlight from that is the fact that like Ted and I weren't the only heartfelt people. Literally, like all the head people, like I have heart connections with. Like, everyone was solid and everyone was driven to make this work. And it was a drive that wasn't forced. It was believed in. And I think they found something there where like people would stay till 5 a.m. doing stuff. I was like, I'm pulling an all-nighter to get this. And it's because we believed in the thing. Like, we believed in this force. And it was a very real thing. It's hard to like talk about, like, but it was like this, it was this utopian feeling of community and love and acceptance. And for me, belonging. Like I felt like I belonged to something. And coming out of college, being
and moving to
alone
New
in
York City, man. I mean,
I was like, sick, I belong.
That's
And
huge.
like
Yeah.
that feeling of belonging was everything. And I think that's also for New Yorkers, like
Oh yeah.
a space where you felt safe and you belonged, and you could literally just talk to people without your phones. Like,
Especially like when you first moved to New York, people don't realize how isolating that can be. You know, they're like, you're around millions of people. Be like, yeah, but
come.
it doesn't mean anything. You know, when you don't know anyone, it feels like you're totally alone. But you know, one of the things that I want to talk about is why are we as a society drawn to figures like Adam? You know, how did he allow toxic masculinity, for lack of a better word, to define and eventually destroy the company that he built?
You know, it's funny because I'm not a magician, but I do a lot of magic tricks because I made a movie about magicians. I do magic very well, and I know a lot about it. I spent 10 years with magicians, and I somehow did not realize that Adam was a magician. He was showing one thing and then doing another. When we see a magic trick, we know that's happening, and that's sort of the game. Is like we say, okay, we're going to play this game where you're going to do something and you're going to trick me, and that's okay because it's going to be fun. This trick, nobody knew we were involved with. Nobody sort of said, okay, do you want to see a magic trick? Right. WeWork wasn't like that. It was like,
ta-da!
Oh, yeah. So, you know, I mean, but I didn't see it. And you know, so the work I do now, I'm a visiting scholar at the Peace Innovation Lab at Stanford, and I'm really interested in masculinity, and I'm really interested in how we go from, well, what is it about the kind of masculinity that's showing up right now? And some people call it toxic, and I get that, but really it's immature masculinity. Mm-hmm. It's a masculinity that's all about charm. And charm, or charming, means seeming as if blessed by God. But inspiring is in the breath of God. Mm-hmm. And the question I ask is like, why are we falling for all of these charming boy kings rather than waiting around to be inspired? It doesn't matter if it's men or women, inspired by leaders who are in the breath of God. They really have a vision that's amazing, and that they're bringing us all with them. And in the breath of God means connected to everyone for the greatest good of everyone. I sit here with an iPhone, and like Steve Jobs started this shit. He's the first boy king. I mean, there are many before him, but like,
toxic, yeah.
The stuff that he's left us is so toxic. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, we decided to put him up on this huge pedestal and think it's okay to act crazy and like a, you know, and to be mean to people and all this kind of stuff, and to act like a petulant child because, well, you're brilliant. Yeah. You know, and it's like, I think that's nonsense. That being said, I really don't appreciate this. And I made the mistake of talking to the writer of this, and I was really hoping that the writer of this was going to tell a story about Adam that's not about Adam, but it's about who are we? What is it about us that we are promoting boy kings? What is it about us that is promoting that is so we're such a quick, we need such a quick fix that charming is good enough? Why can't we wait for inspiring? What is it about us? However, $1 billion loser, man, that's fucking toxic. Like, that's a mean, nasty thing to say.
Capitalizing on this already completely flawed and destructive notion of believing in the boy king. And so now we're going to sensationalize the fall of it, and nobody learns a fucking thing, you know?
Nobody learns a fucking thing. And it's just so sad because I talked with Reeves, and I really thought that we were connecting on how this is really a story about masculinity, and how we need to promote a new kind of mature masculinity, how we need to invite a new masculinity to the stage. And that doesn't mean men. That means the masculine, which is a pole. I mean, I run men's circles specifically because I'm trying to bring myself and other men through the long, dark night of the soul to become wise men, to become men of service.
Right.
And no, I don't think Adam is a man of service. However, there's no reason to say nasty things about him. It's much more interesting to me to say, well, what can we learn from this? What can we learn about ourselves from this story? And I'm sad that I in any way supported this book, because I don't understand why $1 billion loser is just so nasty. Such a nasty thing to say.
It is.
And it makes me so sad, because you don't fight toxicity with toxicity. You don't fight toxins with toxins.
Yeah.
You transmute toxins, and that's not what's happening here.
Yeah. Man, I'm sorry that you were Rita Skeeter. I don't know. I'm just reading Harry Potter to my son. And Rita Skeeter's the name of that reporter who's always screwing people over. And I'm like, he's only 9. But I'm like, do you see how reporters are? Do you see? I think it goes well with my shirt. Anyway, so, you know, it's fascinating, the transformation of the alpha male and how we've gone from John Wayne and Schwarzenegger and Stallone to, you know, kind of like the Revenge of the Nerds era, and Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Zuckerberg, you know, not that one is better than the other, but, you know, when bullies rise to power, they tend to bring a lot of the sociopathy and trauma with them. I mean, we know what happens to kids who are bullied too much. You know, you could Google the Columbine shootings and find out exactly what happens to kids who go off the hinge from being bullied too much. And some of these kids who were bullied are in very large positions of power right now. And it's a scary thing, you know, and even though they may think that they have refined themselves and healed because they have everything you can imagine in the material world, you know, it doesn't mean that they have. And that some of their actions, I think, speak loud and clear to that. But, you know, Adam wanted to, and he strived to be one of these new alpha males, as I understand the situation. So I think that, you know, the archetypes in our society need to transform. And Ted, I really enjoyed what you said about Adam and about that nasty book cover and, you know, the problem with that. And, so thank you for sharing all that.
And let me be clear, because I also want to make sure that I'm not being nasty to Reeves now, the writer, and you know, sending toxin towards him. I'm upset. I'm definitely upset, and I'm voicing my upset. And I wouldn't be surprised if, first, I haven't read the book. I am literally judging the book by its cover, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wanted a different title and he was pushed by the corporate machine to have to come up with that title. And, you know, otherwise, I have no idea. We don't know what's the behind the scenes. I just think it's a sad state of affairs that once again, we're weaponizing gossip.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's, there's a total lapse of responsibility, you know, and that's, boy kings are notorious for not taking responsibility for their actions, for pointing the finger and playing it off. I mean, we see it all the time, from the highest office, you know, right down to the smallest CEO. I mean, it's a problem. It's a maturity problem, you know, and it's rampant in our society, and not just in men. I mean, it is rampant in people, you know. And I mean, I have children as well, and I know you do, Ted, and it's one of the things that I'm constantly telling them about: not blaming, not pointing the finger and blaming people.
Let me be very clear. Masculine and feminine does not mean men and women. They are poles.
Mm-hmm.
There's the masculine on one side, there's the feminine on the other side. We all have the masculine and the feminine, and we move between those two poles. And some of us show up more in one area, and some of us show up more in another area. And men show up generally more in the masculine, and women show up generally more in the feminine. But that's only on average. So when women show up, the workplace, the way we've created the workplace, is an immature masculine place, because we have quarterly reports, which means you cannot take responsibility for your actions. You can't think long term. That's not an option. That's not part of the game. So when women show up in this same space, they show up in their immature masculine. Everyone has immature masculine, and women can do it too. Men do it more, women do it as well.
I'm going to read you guys a quote that I think is incredibly relevant, and I think you'll appreciate. It goes, "A person who has no remorse, no conscience, no ethics, and no compassion is a sociopath. An economic order which does not have a conscience, ethics, or compassion, and which justifies its amorality by saying that all of our responsibility is only to accrue money is a sociopathic economic system. That sociopathic economic system has become an economic tyranny in the United States of America. And we are now living in a time where huge corporate conglomerates, whether it's oil, fossil fuel, chemical, agricultural, big pharma, health insurance companies, the military industrial complex, our government has now become a system of legalized bribery." Marianne Williamson said that when she announced she was running for president. And I just thought, wow, that covers it. That hits the nail right on the head. I mean, that is what is wrong right now with our government and the corporations who quietly run the government, because we all know most of us know that's what's really going on. Some of us, take that back, some of us know. And talking about the environment at WeWork, and and Ted, I love what you said about the understanding that it's not just a male thing, because you can see it, in many women who come up through corporate America and are reconditioned in this, there's no balance. There's too much masculine, and it's a cutthroat, compassionless energy, and we see it all the time. We see it with what's going on right now in our country and around the world with some of the things going on with COVID, and that's a whole nother podcast though. But I would love to hear.
To be clear, it's not too much masculine. It's immature masculine. It's not about having too much masculine, because usually when a lot of masculine shows up, a lot of feminine shows up in order to balance it. It's when you have the immature masculine that you get into trouble, that you have petulant children, or you have what the Tantra archetype is of the high chair tyrant. I don't know if you can think of a high chair tyrant who might be running a country right now that might be saying things like, maybe he doesn't leave if he is taken out of office, which destroys a democracy.
Yeah, I can think of a few actually.
People think, oh, but people are greedy, and that's just that's the natural nature of people, and so corporate America is the response to people being greedy. And I would argue that's not true. And the reason we know that's not true, or one way we know that's not true, is that the game Monopoly, the way we all play it, where it lasts forever, is not the game that was created. The game that was created, and is not the game that you buy, by the way. When you buy the game, if you actually read the top of the box and played by those rules, which means you land on free parking, you don't get money, you don't get extra money from time to time from different places, none of that stuff. All that stuff that we added to keep people playing makes it an infinite game, which is beautiful and is what we want.
Right.
The actual game, if you play it correctly, it ends in about 20 minutes, and there are winners and losers, and it's very clear. And the whole point of the game was it was created by some religious group, I can't remember which one. It was created by them to teach their children, I think it might have been the Amish, or a group like the Amish, to teach their children that this kind of, that corporations and monopoly are something you want to stay away from. So they would play it for 20 minutes. They would be angry because some would win, some would lose. They'd be bored and they'd go outside.
Yeah, it was
that was
created,
the point
I think,
of the
to
game.
demonstrate the evils of capitalism. Like, look, see how much fun this is? It's not, you know what I mean? I mean, I walk in and my kids are trying to play and I just hear them yelling and fighting. I'm like, why are you, they should make that game and the Ouija board that you're just taking it right off the shelves because they're both trouble. You know?
Well, if you played it correctly, it wouldn't be
Yeah.
trouble.
Same with
You'd
Ouija,
be
really.
done in 20 minutes and you'd learn your lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one of the things that I've been talking about, you know, with a lot of people, and that I'm so thrilled to have you guys on to talk about, is this the fact that we are human beings and that we are living in this capitalistic society, and that when you take the human factor out, because correct me if I'm wrong, but
so basically a corporation starts when a group of people get together, they create an entity, and then at that moment they start to abdicate. They abdicate responsibility to a concept, and the concept has no moral center whatsoever. And it has two things it must do. It's actually the law that it must do these things. It must grow and it must collect money. And whoever runs it must make sure that it grows and collects money, or they are not doing their fiduciary responsibility and can actually be sued for that.
that's right.
It's not the CEO's fault. It's literally their job. They have to do that. They don't have a choice. And so, and then as you abdicate responsibility, and then as you make it exponential, because you start abdicating responsibility and then you hire people and you abdicate responsibility to them, and on and on and on and on it goes. Well, then nobody has responsibility, and there's no moral compass, and there's nobody to say, but this isn't what we're supposed to be doing, and this isn't the right way, and blah, 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 because nobody can do that anymore, because there's no human. You see, the thing that I think is interesting is people say, yeah, but corporations are made up of people. No, they're not. People work for corporations.
Right.
They're not made up of people.
Right. There's a big difference. And
what I
think needs to change, you know, the laws right now in our country protect the corporation and protect the company, and not the people and not the planet. And that this has been written right into policy, and you can see it. I mean, and it's literally killing us in a lot of ways. And just, you know, look at what's going on right now. Everybody's heard the word Monsanto. Everybody knows Bayer. And, you know, the fact that we have a government health organization that has yet to recognize the direct link between Roundup and glyphosate. Am I saying that right? Is it glyphosate?
Glyphosate, yep.
Glyphosate and cancer. And you have other countries like Mexico who Americans tend to, you know, look upon with this, you know, inferiority.
Disdain.
Right. Who have already scheduled it to be banned. And you know, and that's all because of the government's policy of protecting corporations over people at all costs. Doesn't matter how many lives are lost. I mean, and you can go right, you're talking about 80 years of a sordid history of doing this, of putting corporations first. And it is a problem. And you know, if we're entering into a new world, it's one of the things that has to change. But, you know, there's only been a few presidents who, you know, even acknowledged it, let alone tried to change it. The ones that tried to change it didn't survive. You know, and, you know, we could argue about Trump all day, but I don't think he's trying to change that. You know, he may be trying to change a few things, and you know, but business is not something that he frowns upon. Obviously, he's a businessman. So
it's interesting that you bring up a couple of presidents that didn't survive, because the brother of the president who didn't survive, Robert Kennedy, I worked with Edgar Kahn, who was his speechwriter, and Edgar Kahn went on to be the father of time banking. And what Edgar Kahn taught me about economics was the most interesting thing I've ever heard. And I really understood why economics is a pseudoscience. And the reason is because economics does not take into account externalities, which means it does not take into account in the math the effect that any of the things it does has. So for example, you do something and it affects the air, that's not figured in to the economics of what has happened. It might at some point happen with the carbon tax. That's the beginning of even considering worrying about externalities. And without externalities as part of the conversation, you're counting nonsense.
Right.
Because you're talking about growth, but you're not talking about growth and thinking about the effect you're having on other people.
Right.
But like, I'm sitting here in Stockholm, okay? This is a place that deeply cares about public health, deeply. They care a lot. They do a lot to care about public health. There are a lot of rules and regulations to make sure that people are safe, to a degree that Swedes are annoyed by. They're just like, come on. It's like this, like, why do you have all these fucking rules? But what's really interesting to me is that COVID hits, and all of a sudden, the United States cares about public health. How did that happen? We don't care about glyphosate. We allow drunk driving. Drunk driving is legal in America. 0.08% is drunk driving, smoking, not to mention the fact drinking. That we let you do it anyway. Here, it's 0.02%. If you have a little bit too much mouthwash and you get into a car, you're done driving, because they don't allow drunk driving because it kills people.
Right.
So why are we so worried about COVID, which is basically unstoppable? There's nothing you can do about it. It's a fucking virus, unless you want to act like a fascist country.
Or put yourself in a fucking hermetically sealed suit, I mean,
exactly. But there are things we can fix. We could stop drunk driving. We could stop glyphosate. We could stop so many things that are killing us. And part of the reason, by the way, that America's doing so badly is because we're a fucking sick country. We're really, really sick. And so, of course, when a virus comes, we're not going to do so well. Why is Sweden doing so well? Part of the reason is because they're not sick.
Much healthier population,
much healthier. And they have done nothing. They've basically done nothing. I'm here in Stockholm, and like, I don't know, there's some lines on the floor to say like, try to be separate and like, whatever, but they don't wear masks or any of that madness. Nothing.
Dude, it's fucking insane here. Don't even get me started, because I will never shut up about it. But yeah, I've been saying this, man, and people don't want to hear it, because people don't want to take responsibility for their own health. People do not want to take responsibility for their sovereignty. It's easy to give your power away. It's a victim mentality, and it's rampant here. And you can't tell anyone anything. Like they want their vaccines, they want their McDonald's, they want their masks. They don't want you near them because you may breathe on them. I mean, even New York City, dude.
I have to argue with you. I don't agree. I don't think people really want that. I think that people have been taught to want that. Yeah. I think there's a big difference. I don't think people want McDonald's. I think just like people don't, it's like a drug, like any other drug. You give someone a drug and you get their dopamine receptor to hit, and nobody wants Facebook. Yeah. We're just fucking addicted to it. I actually think that it's not actually that we like this masks, all the stuff that the whole way that we're showing up. We were taught that we don't know our bodies and we don't know what's best for us. I was taught that, and that the doctors know what's best for you. So what are you going to do? That's what you're taught.
No, it's true.
I don't think it's really people's fault as much as it's a bad code. Yeah, a bad code that's been taught to people and sort of given to people in a way that is problematic.
No, I think you're onto something. I'm with you. So speaking of immature masculinity, and how rampant it is, you guys are basically a fallout from this kind of environment and this workplace. So it's fascinating to hear your story, considering the size that WeWork took, and how huge it became, and how in my opinion, you guys were instrumental in that size, and how grand this company became. And I think that also was instrumental in Adam's downfall and how he became a boy king, But I wanted to hear a little more about that. And Alex, I want to hear about your experience, because I know that it was not all sunshine and roses for you, and that you're still kind of dealing with the environment that you dealt with, in a lot of ways, the repercussions of that, and some PTSD that came from it. So I want to hear that as well.
Cool. Do you want to start then, Ted, or should I go in? How do you want to do this?
Let me just say one thing. I'll just say, when I got fired, it fucking hurt. It really, really hurt because I did think I was part of something. And I was
Mm.
like, I was totally surprised by being fired. Like I did not see it coming at all. And Adam said to me, but like, don't worry. It's just, this isn't the right place for you. But like, I've got lots of friends. We're going to set you up and all that kind of stuff. And I never heard from him again. And it was really fucking painful. Like it
Yeah.
really, really hurt. Many, many years later, you know, I was still kind of like angry with him. And I realized like, it's really important to forgive people, not for the person you're forgiving, but for yourself, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're holding that upset and there's no reason to be holding that upset. Or as my teacher put it, it's like a little piece of you is putting its arms like this, you know, is crossing its arms and standing at the doorway of this person who left a long time ago. It's
That's
like,
right.
call that soldier back. So the way I called the soldier back was I wrote Adam an email to thank him for what he taught me. And that really made me feel better.
Yeah.
And he didn't respond, and I didn't expect him to respond, but it did make me feel better. And what I thanked him for was I thanked him for teaching me that if you don't allow the people around you to feel safe in the ideas that you're bringing forth and the way you plan to make them happen, then you're leaving them out.
Yeah.
And since people support what they help create, it doesn't work that way. You can't do that. And he taught me that. That was very helpful.
Yeah. Just talking to someone, Ted, who is he's a physicist, but he's a psychophysicist. He studied quantum physics, and he acts as
Joe Dispenza?
No, Dr. Joe is he's my teacher. I could talk about him all day, but this guy is a different individual. His name's Michael Pisaje. I don't know if I said his last name right, but you could check out his podcast. He was on the show, but he talks a lot about forgiveness and how, you know, when he gets these people who come to him, one of the biggest things that he finds and tracks in the body is, you know, and what he unearths is that it is a forgiveness thing. It's something that they are holding on to because they've been so hurt and they don't want to let go of it. And he's like, don't let go of it for them, let go of it for you, man. You know, let go of it for you and you will heal. And
Exactly.
It's amazing to hear someone, you know, and you're echoing that here. So I just wanted to
Well,
point that out.
the place I learned it, in addition to my teacher, Thomas Jones of the Paradox Process, the other place I learned it was in the Book of Joy, which is Archbishop Desmond Tutu talking with the Dalai Lama. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu is telling about when he created the peace and the peace and what is it? The peace and reconciliation tribunals.
Yeah.
For it was either Rwanda or Burundi, I can't remember, and it was the Hutu and the Tutsi, and I don't remember which side was which, so I might get this wrong, but the Hutu mothers whose sons had been killed by Tutsi warriors, he went to the mothers and he said, the best thing we can do is for you to forgive the killers of your sons. And the thinking would be like, I'm not going to forgive the killer of my son. But he convinced them to do it. And what it did was it created relationship between the mothers and the killers and now they both became humans again. And they were able to heal together because the truth of the matter is that in a restorative justice context, not in a crime and punishment context, but in a restorative justice context, the toxin is not any individual, it is in the system, and the system must work together to bring it out.
Yeah, it's so true. Alex, can you tell me a little bit about some of the things that went on at WeWork and, you know, you being a minority, you know, you mentioned your salary was $60K. Meanwhile, you're making videos that were literally closing $20 million deals. And I know that emotionally, it's been scarring for you. I mean, if it's okay if I say that, and you know, can you talk a bit about it if you're comfortable with that?
Yeah. I think. How do I start? I was just so young, and I went into situations with full trust.
How old were you?
And I was 23. and I'd never lived in the city. So like, I just went in with full trust. This is a good person. And in the beginning, like Adam is an incredible, he was inspirational, and he demanded this certain energy that like felt really special, and it felt good to be around. Once the company started getting bigger, he started operating with fear. So the way that he could control how it all worked was fear. And a lot of it was based on judgment of not doing a good job, or even just like you're not worth his time. So he shows up like super late. And so he created these almost tactics, which to be honest, I really believe were tactics because he did that with really important meetings. So like he would come an hour and a half late to a really important meeting, and they'd never been waited on before. Like they're just like, what are we doing? He could do that, and they would stay, and that would give him this like presence, and like he was needed, or WeWork was needed. And like I think as time wore on, like you saw more celebrities coming in, and the parties got bigger, and it just you could see that he cared a lot about being cool. And like that whole boy king aspect of being QB1 like started showing up. And I remember like it was awkward when like at summer camp he would go find the artist and like pour him a tequila shot and make sure he got pictures with him and things like that.
Tell us what happened with that video. You know, and I've heard the words intellectual property rape before. I mean,
yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think it's maybe another case of like Rebecca or something where like I created the summer camp video, the first one. I used a song which said, "Do what you love." Then literally after we screamed that for about a week, the slogan, everything changed to "Do what you love." Now, they called it divine timing because they had created that. That's kind of crazy to think like that was real. Like they felt the video, they liked what it meant. They were like, this is what everyone's doing. They should do what they love.
Yeah. And
so then next week, you see 8-story building plastered "Do what you love" on the side. And I was just like, whoa. Wow. I remember making that at 4 a.m. What is going on?
Yeah.
And it was so interesting because it felt very, the relationship felt very transactional and taking. And I almost was just like, this is what it is. I didn't know anything any better. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Like I should act this way and do what he says. And I kind of became that like pawn. There wasn't a level of kind of trust and respect that I had with Ted when I would create with him. And to be honest, he was the only other person that I created with in this type of capacity. And so then Adam hired me a manager who was an asshole. And then it just became this like, and to be honest, now it sounds like I'm almost being a victim in this. Like, here's the thing. I was young. I had no idea what was going on and didn't know how to stand up for myself, and I didn't really have a voice either. Like I couldn't speak my feelings or stand up for myself. And so I got trapped in these scenarios. And so I was trapped. And thinking about it now, which is amazing, is that I started filming musicians because they made me feel something, and it gave me life. And so I filmed my best friend's band, the Great Caesar. And we had this dream to make this music video that was sporting equal rights and gay rights and civil rights. And we did a Kickstarter. And I convinced Adam in a pitch to donate 10 grand to the Kickstarter. And then I quit. And I forgot that was actually part of it. And it's pretty amazing that I remember him writing the check and then going to his office and saying like, yeah, I can't work here anymore.
Yeah.
And when I did that, I felt this power come back.
Yeah.
And he then said, you can't leave.
How did he try to convince you to stay again?
Well, he was just like, I'll double your salary.
Yeah.
And then he then was just like, okay, I'll give you more than that. And it's just like one of those things where he was realizing he had lost me.
Yeah.
What was
and you were realizing what you should have been being
and
paid
what I should have been said, yeah,
the whole time. Yeah.
yeah, and I still didn't know. And to be honest, I still like not maybe till like 6 months ago did I kind of know my worth. Like I didn't really know how much people made in this and what I was doing for these people and for these companies. And what's hard is that thing I did with WeWork continued into the 3 other companies I've worked with since. But now I have my own company, and now I'm finally learning like, whoa, wait a second. And so that's been beautiful to break that cycle.
I bet,
but it was wild to go, because I would come back to WeWork. So I would come back and film their like big events.
They were constantly tempting you to come back, right? I mean, they threw out some offers for you. Right?
Huge. And like they came back, and like from filming the WeWork Summit, they rented out the entire the WeWork Summit was insane. What was that? 2018, I think it was. They rented out this entire hotel, and then they rented out the entire Universal Studios.
What?
So we could ride all the rides and do everything. And then the Chainsmokers played.
Oh my God. It's no wonder they lost. I mean,
it was wild. I remember riding the Harry Potter ride twice, and I was like, I would normally have to wait in line here for 5 hours.
Oh my God, man. I mean, like the amount of money that they spent. I mean, and like
you should have seen these events they put on too. Like, and they threw money at the performances because they wanted to be cool.
Mm-hmm.
So like they gave, I don't know numbers, but the rumors are just having these celebrities getting thrown in, giving them 6 figures to literally just show up.
What do you call that? Celebrity spotting, or what do they call that?
Not
when they pay them to show up. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Half the time they're doing that,
but they were doing that, and then I think it all came to a real end. There was, well, I don't know if I want to talk about that project. It came to the real end. The We Grow is Rebecca's childcare. And she didn't like my video. And the day before it showed to all the parents and the press, she re-edited it without asking me to a Beatles song. And it looked horrendous. It was terrible. And I'm in the audience watching it, and I'm like, did she really re-edit my video without asking? And like, we spent all this time making this video, and I left and I haven't spoken to them since. I just got up and left.
I don't blame you, man.
Yeah, because I'm like, here they go again. Like, I can't believe they think they could do this when I put like 2 months into making that video. And
I mean, we talk about it. What a screw job, man. I mean, how could you can't feel more screwed over than that, you know, and all of a sudden you're looking at a video that you worked on, and it's not the video you worked on, that you put your heart into.
It's like this like thing in your gut. And you're like, whoa.
It's like a punch in the gut. It's like a visceral punch in the gut. You're like, what? I mean, I've felt it. I've been in a situation just like that. You're like, this is not what I made. This is not what we put our heart into. Just for context for our listeners, do you guys want to say who Rebecca is so people know kind of her pedigree, for lack of a better word?
Rebecca is Adam Neumann's wife.
Mm-hmm. She
also has now become a co-founder, stated as a co-founder because she says she helped create it. And so she asks, I'm pretty sure she's a co-founder now. It's like Miguel, her, and Adam.
Yeah. And
it turns out I went to high school with her, even though I didn't realize it until much later.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But
she was a year above me in high
sister?
school. She's
got it.
Gwyneth Paltrow's sister. No, Gwyneth Paltrow's cousin.
Her cousin.
But she's a Paltrow.
She's a Paltrow. Maybe she wants her own vagina candle.
She might.
I guess we'll have to cut that part out.
No, put that part in. That's amazing.
After Ted was gone, you continued on, and how long were you guys separated? And then when did you end up coming back together?
So Ted was gone. I stayed for another like year and a half, maybe two. And then I left. And then I was scared to reach out to Ted. I felt a lot of shame and guilt and sadness around the whole incident, that I had to lose a friend for signing myself to WeWork. And it took some courage to reach out. I think we potentially bumped into each other a few times when he was still in New York. And then I remember having some phone calls with him just to check in. But
we ran into each other at Burning Man.
No way.
That's what it was. So
I don't know that was our reconnection, but that was like the beginning of starting to be our reconnection. But we definitely ran into each other.
I remember running into you, but I was pretty fucked up. So like, I don't remember it too much. But
how the fuck did you? I mean, it's so hard to run into someone at Burning Man without knowing where they are. And you guys ran into each other?
Yeah,
it was supposed to be. It had, it was one of those kind of manifestation things that had to happen.
I mean, I tried to find friends, and I knew where they were going to be, and we had the time and everything, and I'm like, where the fuck are they? Like I couldn't find them anywhere. It's crazy. It's cool.
Yeah, so I think it was more of that moment, and I think what it was the experience of seeing you. In that instant, I did feel like torn, not sure how to be myself with you, because I was experiencing the shame that I had with it, that I was like, why am I scared, or why is the energy off here? And I remember holding on to that and realizing, wait a second, that's something that's not been cleared in my life yet. And then I remember calling you, not specifically mentioning that moment, but to kind of just reconnect. And what's been so cool now is like, Ted is literally my executive coach, and and also just has always been, but has become a great friend. And it's been really cool to see, for me to realize in the beginning, that's what he was doing in the beginning. Like I had just moved to New York. He was helping me. He was coaching me, and it's fun to have that energy back into my life. And
cool.
Also the same way, like I've been doing, I'm involved in a lot of masculine work as well. And so it's been cool to like have conversations with him about circling and men's groups and stuff.
Yeah, man, it's an important conversation to have. And I wanted to ask you guys, while I have you, I don't know if you can talk about it or not.
Can I just respond to that first before you ask the next question? I realized, like, I coach individuals now in addition to running men's circles, and I'm really happy to have Alex as a client, because it's amazing working with him.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that he taught me to be a coach, that I even was a coach. I didn't know that. When we were at WeWork, I had no idea that that's what I was doing. That our relationship was like that, and that was the most important thing we were doing at WeWork. Really, all the other stuff was, whatever. But like the relationship we were creating was really meaningful, and it took me a long time to figure that out. And so to come full circle now, and to be doing that work professionally as my main, thing that I do, and to have Alex in that is just a wonderful thing. So I deeply appreciate Alex for sort of like teaching me who I am.
That's I'm so glad you shared that, Ted, because I feel like every situation has an opportunity like that. Even the ones that were like, oh man, that was the worst. Like that was the worst time of my life. But now, it's like, but yeah, okay. But you understand that you came from that time, and you're here now with that experience because of that time. So it doesn't have to be the worst. It could just be a stepping stone. I just think that recontextualizing is such an important way to not only understand your past, but understand where you are right now. And so I'm glad you shared that, because I think it's important. It's not a trick, but for people to practice, then to hear that and to hear your story, how you didn't even realize it, but that's what was going on. I feel like it happens to a lot of us. Yeah. I wanted to ask you while I have you guys, I know it's a little controversial, about Saudi Arabia and the $2 billion that they gave and invested in WeWork. And I mean, it was the guy who killed Khashoggi, right? I mean, can you talk about that, or is that off limits?
I don't know. Like, it was also more than 2 billion. It was going to be a lot more than that, and then they only gave that amount.
I mean, like $2 billion. $2 billion.
No, but it was going to be like 15.
My God. Like, I don't understand that. How do you make that sales pitch?
It's not often the case that Israelis and Saudi Arabians see eye to eye.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting.
I mean,
change of
Alex,
events.
tell me about when you went to Saudi Arabia, and the kind, like, just a little bit.
Here's where I'm at. I think it's okay to talk about. I definitely didn't sign anything, but I also want to know, like, if we want to save this for something we want to do later, because it is like, that is
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Because like that was literally one of so Adam had a guy who was he was the director of special projects.
Yeah.
Who was that?
What?
Who was the director of special projects?
It was.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And so he did all the special projects.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they brought me in, and they're just like, can you do this? Can you fly to Saudi Arabia and film a documentary about the potential WeWorks and the partners that we would be created in the Middle East? We can give you right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I need at least.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, without question.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck. So much more.
That's not enough.
You know what? I misspoke. We're gonna need 150.
I was like, that was so easy. And what I realized, it was literally because it was for the opening of the $15 billion deal coming through.
Wow.
And that's the video that was going to be like shown and all throughout the Middle East and everything like that. And so I went for 10 days. It was so intense. Like, I put myself through some crazy shit personally to get through into that, because like, I remember getting chased because I was filming a woman.
Oh.
And
yeah.
I remember being scared for my life, that like this crew of guys saw me filming a woman.
Yeah.
And they started yelling something and started coming towards us. And she said, get in the car. And it was just like these really, it brought me an understanding of how Riyadh works and how like it's a very, very different country. And I was hanging out, but also I had the luxury of hanging out with a Saudi prince who was going to be the director of WeWork.
Wow.
And so I got it through his eyes. Like,
yeah, that's what I mean. And, you know, we've spoke a little bit about this before, and you were like, dude, I mean, like, what did he think that he was building? I mean, what did he think he was going to be in charge of?
He thought he was going to be in charge of WeWork in Middle East. Like he thought he was going to run. He thought he would have the opportunity becoming kind of the Adam of the Middle East.
I see.
That's
cool, man.
Have you stayed in touch?
Yeah, dude, we were going to host a men's group in the desert in Saudi before COVID hit.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I was going to fly to Riyadh.
Wow.
And I was going to film it. I was going to film that.
Nice.
That's crazy.
Very
you know,
cool.
One of the things that I think, and you know, I think it's changing now. I think it's becoming more understood, but I think it needs to be taught. It's like, Ted, you were talking about how, the problem is that people are not taught about their bodies, and I think it's the same with vulnerability and masculinity, but there's this disconnect where kids from a young age, and it's not just in boys, but even girls, it's this vulnerability is kind of stamped out of them, and that's so harmful in the long run, and it's not. I feel like it's, a lot of the destructive behaviors that we see, in even highly successful people comes from this stamping out of vulnerability. And, one of the biggest things I think that is a takeaway from all this, is that, it's a superpower for men, I mean, ask any woman who's evolved, and I think they'll agree, it's becoming more and more common, but I think needs to become even more common, and
I'll take it another step. It's a superpower for leaders.
Yeah.
Because if you are vulnerable as a leader, you're doing two things. One, you're creating trust among the people around you that you are human like they are.
Mm-hmm.
And two, you're taking away any ability for them to hold something against you because you've already given them everything.
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability is absolutely a superpower. It's what we teach we don't teach, it's what we hold as a truth in Quantum Warrior, the men's circle that I run. And so between vulnerability and responsibility becomes, that's where the mature masculine is found.
Emotions are such a powerful energy that go out, and we have this huge spectrum of it. And we don't realize it when we stop using parts of it, that we're cutting ourselves off from our power and our true expression of who we are. And, for some men, it's worse than others, but I just wanted to bring that up because we are on Far Out with Faust, and you guys aren't getting off the show without coming far out with me. Okay. So I want to ask you, Alex.
We didn't go far out with COVID?
Well, we're not far out enough, man. I mean, COVID is just another freaking virus.
I'm ready.
Trillions of them.
Bring it.
Ted, what's your experience with aliens? How many ships have you been on? Tell us the truth, man. Just kidding.
Swimming with the dolphins with Hunter in Hawaii was a fucking amazing experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was extraordinary. And you really got the sense of these animals. They're like, there's
you
something
see why
going
they're tied
on
into the extraterrestrial lore, and in so many ways. I mean,
very much so.
Yeah,
very much so. I mean, I've always known that. My father and I used to go see the orcas every year, and orcas are dolphins. I mean, they're called killer whales, but they're really dolphins. And I mean, orcas are incredibly smart. I think they're smarter than humans. God. And the way we know that is because they form very complicated social structures. They have, they mourn their
family
dead.
Culture, right? Yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of culture.
They each have their own family, yeah.
The difference is, unlike humans, and this might only be because of our opposable thumb, but I don't know, they don't destroy the place they live.
No.
So they seem a lot fucking smarter than we are.
Well, they can be perfectly present in that incarnation, and that's, I think, what they go in for. The beings who incarnate as orcas and dolphins. It's a different consciousness than we have, slightly less complicated, but not less intelligent. But yeah, I understand what you mean. Alex, what do you think, man? Come on, tell us what you believe. Hey, it's okay. It's not everyone believes, so don't feel pressured.
I was with this couple who's median people, and like an alien encumbered the husband, and he shapeshift and then spoke tongue, and then the wife translated, and he at one moment turned his head at an angle that shouldn't have been turned at, and stared at me. And stared at me and started
stuff.
Yeah, and started yelling in gibberish. The wife then starts crying and saying, like, we finally met him.
What?
And then I start shaking uncontrollably.
You're like, fuck
And
this.
I literally start almost seizuring. And then right when I stopped,
Were you scared or were you?
no,
Was it like a reaction?
my body started like full on like this. And then right
Wow.
when it stopped, I went like this. He went on the ground and just bowed and just started crying.
Oh my God.
And then
And then how did that change your energy?
And he started whispering, "I'm in the presence of an angel."
Wow.
And I was like, "Whoa, what do I believe?"
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But so
when did this happen?
Like
Yeah, when did
2
this
years
happen?
ago, one of my friends, Andrew, invited me. He's like, "Yo, I want to meet you. I want to take you to the best meeting I've ever been to." And I'm like, "Shut up, dude."
Yeah.
And it's this like couple that flew in um, in Topanga.
Boy, that was a memorable night for you, huh? You were like,
Yeah,
what the fuck?
that was fucking nuts. And I was like, "Am I a prince of the galaxy?"
Well, yeah, you are in more ways than you imagine. But so
Wow.
when this entity came over this guy, could you sense that the energy in the room changed?
Yeah, it got different for sure. And like when he looked at me, I got this feeling of I was scared, and then really I felt this out of body. I shaked.
And when you looked at him, you know, one of my guests from my last show was talking about how when she first started channeling, you know, how we are all made of plasma, and you know, when we think of like ectoplasm, we think of like fucking Slimer from Ghostbusters, not Star Wars. That'd be a weird Star Wars if Slimer was in it, but you know, and I was telling her how when I think of ectoplasm, I think of Slimer, but she was like, you know, we are all also plasma. And when she first started the channel, she used to notice her features change, and she would channel open-eyed and she'd see people get freaked out. So she started to channel closed-eyed, and then the energy balanced itself out. But she talks about how you could see the shift in her. I mean, like her friends used to get freaked out, and people watching her channel. And I just think it's an amazing correlation between what you just said. And could you see like this dude? Like, was he like, did it seem like his face was like changing?
Oh yeah, it wasn't him anymore.
Right. That's wow.
He was completely different, and he wasn't of this world. Like he was different. It felt very unhuman, and it wasn't something that I could connect with.
Yeah.
And it felt very real. Being in that presence of it, it felt very, very real. And so like my friend was like sitting next to me saying, "Don't get scared." And like I was fucking
he's elbowing you.
You know, I was like, "Dude, what?
Why did you bring me here?"
You know, I'm like, "Are you gonna do something to me? Is like, are you part of some kind of cult that like sacrifices humans? Like, am I the one guest that was brought?"
That's crazy, man. That's crazy that happened in front of you.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what they had in mind when they were like, "Yeah, bring your friend over. We'll introduce him."
Who knows what they had in mind?
That's crazy.
But
man.
it definitely brought this new kind of perspective on, like, I had never thought of that.
Yeah. You should watch some of my other podcasts. Get another perspective or two. I mean, you know, there's a wide variety of things going on that we can't see necessarily, but it's all good. In the end, it's all good.
Yeah. And I do believe in magic. Like I do believe in the supernatural.
Dude, so where was this being supposedly coming in from, and where, like, what did they say? Like, what, you know, what happened?
So it was a god from a different universe, and he's able to channel gods from different universes, and he doesn't know who's going to show up.
So he just kind of opens the door,
and we all do this like kind of prayer kind of thing in the beginning. And it opened it up, and then we just were sitting there, and he was normal, like, yeah, but he was like making these like aching sounds, yeah, that were just not human. Like they weren't human at all. Like it wasn't. I've never heard a human make that sound.
So he just kind of opened the door and then let whatever show up
there to control, like to manage it. Yeah. And the wife translates him and is connected through him to translate.
So that's not so uncommon that the husband and wife have a psychic connection, and one can, but the fact that he open the door like that and has the welcome mat out for quote gods from other, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that should be a red flag because I believe we're all gods, you know, but when you put that out there, you're inviting a being who is going to believe himself to be superior. And so that's a different energy that he's inviting in. I mean, like, did he say what universe he was god of or what you know?
To be honest, I bet he did. And
You just blocked
I
it out.
so blocked that out. Like,
Yeah.
I, well, oh, here's one other thing. I did a horse constellation mapping.
Okay.
So there's constellation readings, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I did a horse constellation reading where a woman she stood up, she picked me and another person to be the two people that go into the horse stable with her. And there's this huge white horse and this other big brown horse. And I was her father in the constellation. And she just, when I enter the stable, I immediately feel like I'm a different person.
Wow.
And I start violently punching the ground me not in control.
Wow.
I just start punching the ground, screaming, and it turns out he's a Vietnam vet. And I just start punching the ground, and the horse comes and runs and blocks me in front from her.
Wow.
And he puts his body next to mine, and it turns out that horses have a huge heart, and so they feel more than us. And so throughout the whole constellation, it basically was reuniting her with me. But the whole time, the horse was like picking up on everything I was doing. Like I wanted to kick, and the horse would come and take the shoe off of my foot and give it to her.
That's so crazy, man.
And then when we connected, they both circled around us, and then they both rested their heads on mine and hers at the end.
So this is why they use the horses, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like that's phenomenal, dude. I mean,
insane. But it also, dude, I do so many weird things. I've met so many weird people at Burning Man, dude. Like,
yeah.
and they're like, yo, Alex feels shit really hard and he's super smiley. Let's go show him a good time.
Let's take him to the horses. Take him to the horses.
Yeah, he's gonna come to the horse stable.
Dude, that sounds awesome. I want to do that. That sounds awesome.
You can literally go do that. Her name's Matisse. It's in New York.
No shit.
It's in upstate New York. We could go do it.
I'm gonna get the information, dude.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
And you should do a podcast with her in the middle of the horse thing.
So Ted, I gotta ask you one final question before I let you go. I know you're running short on time, but I'm very interested in the answer to this. So, if you were leaving the planet, if you were transitioning, moving on, but you could leave one bit of wisdom or knowledge or a mantra with humanity that you feel would allow for a greater expression of ease and livelihood in their life, something that they could understand, what would you give to them?
That intimacy is created when you share to be known and listen to know. If you share to understand and listen to agree or reach agreement, you can build skyscrapers, but you can't build intimacy.
Excellent. Profound. Alex, same question, brother.
Well, I think the first thing that popped into my head is just sharing joy. Finding the best way to share joy for you to give to the world is something that's very important. And I think also something that's been an ongoing journey for me is just my relationship with belonging. I'm adopted from South Korea, and I've been on this journey my whole life, and just kind of just sharing that like you belong, and just like holding on to that. It just, for me at least, it alleviates a lot of pressure that I felt of feeling not like I belong.
Yeah.
It's like I belong to myself. I belong to who I am, and having and maintaining that connection, that really creates a sense of self that I didn't previously have language for.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's a big thing to come to realize and be reminded of, you know, that we do all belong, and that we all are one race in it together, you know. But you guys, this has been awesome. Super excited to share this conversation with everyone, and I'm grateful for your time. I know I took up a lot of it. It's a fascinating story, guys. I can see why it's being sought after by Hollywood executives. I know Alex has been stalked even during COVID, which is crazy. But you guys rock, man. Ted, Alex, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me and sharing all this stuff. It's been real. We're going to talk again, I think.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the space you hold, and it's been really nice spending time with you.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Alex, I'm going to get the name of that horse place.
100%.
Okay. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much again. Appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and we'll be in touch for sure.
Take care, everybody.